Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of This Week with Wendy. One of our favorite conversations that we wait for each and every week because we never know where this is going to go. We just know that Wendy Ross, after decades of working as a real estate broker in Silicon Valley and Orange County and elsewhere, she decided it was enough. It's time to do something different. So she did. She started Veracity Real Estate. Time was ripe, she thought, for a commitment to bespoke client advocacy. Yeah, I said at all price levels, something you don't see very often. And through it all, she's built a decision-making team that uses data. How about that? Not just sticking their finger in the wind and seeing which way the things are blowing these days. She's really trying to look ahead. She's come up with a lot of data-driven decision makers, and we are loving it because I don't know what to make of half of the data half the time here. So today, Wendy's going to bring us up to speed. Wendy, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. I'm so delighted to actually be here.
We don't want to save it once again. Kind of 30 seconds before airtime, she's flying in here.
It's shocking how fast I can run in heels.
It's amazing.
Oh my God, I blame it on the 80s. You know, we all ran around in heels all for decades. So they're sort of just affixed to
That should be a song. That should be your theme song. Blame it on the 80s. I like that.
Oh, you delight me. So, yeah.
Well, you always delight us with who you bring. Who'd you bring with you today? Before we get to the market stuff here, who did you bring
I know,
with
a little bit of a teaser here. So remember last week we talked about an overview of the IOI Summit and all the fascinating people that I met and the technology and all of that. So that led to the question of, so what is the future of social apps in and about real estate? And we're going to talk about that in depth today with Craig Bromberg. And Craig is the CEO and co-founder of Homesy, a social real estate app. So it's a deep, deep conversation, deeper than I anticipated. And he's got just these brilliant insights into the why and the how and how to make it valuable and relevant.
I'm going to say the question that every listener is asking in their mind. What is a social media? What did you call it? A social media real estate app? Does the house talk? Does the house communicate to other houses here? And
see, yet again, we're going to blow your mind, Paul.
I don't even know what that is.
You got to put a pin in that and just wait for it.
Okay.
Craig is going to tell us all about it. So, but yeah, that IOI Summit, even though it was only the fourth year, they brought so many incredible thought leaders and futurists all talking about various aspects of prop tech.
And you were at the center of it. You got to go cover this thing, and I don't think there was a lot of coverage for it. I didn't read about it in the LA Times. I didn't see things happening here. And all these thought leaders looking at the future of real estate and real estate, the industry. How do you sell? How do you communicate? How do you How do you market? How do you do all these things?
And the ironic thing is that, I went in, for OC Talk Radio with a target list of people to speak to, and they were obviously mostly presenters because those were the easiest to, find, to stalk on the internet. And I met Craig at the very end in the lobby bar. I am not kidding you. And he came down and sat down with a people that were my new friends. And I'm like, who are you? I've seen you. What are you doing? And here we are.
We are. All right, we're going to get Homesy with him here today.
We're going to get Homesy with him, but first...
Give us a quick overview.
Yeah, the show's called This Week with Wendy for a reason, so let's just talk about what's happening in Orange County real estate. And so far, month to date, we have 3,622 active listings. That's down 0.5% from last week in terms of gain, and we're still down 15% from normal at this point of the year. So we've got 1,777 homes in escrow, and again, that's trending down 10% from last week, which makes sense as we move into Q4. And it's going to take about 60 days if we want to sell through all of our inventory, which is much cooler than normal. Normally, at this time of year, it would only take about 30 days. So definitely, it's a tepid market, and those rising rates did put a big lid on things for us. We have only sold 860 homes in the entire county month to date.
The amazing thing is you sold 800 of them.
I love you, man, but no. I've been busy representing you on OC Talk Radio.
That's right.
I've been distracted. But again, that's down. Normally by now we'd have about 1,400 sales in the bag. So we're down 40% off normal, which is, again, unfortunately, the trend that I think is going to happen for many, many years to come.
It's going to be a cool winter.
It's going to be a long, cold winter, and we're going to have fewer sales in Orange County for the next several years for all the reasons we've talked about. But, And then this is interesting. The median price is slipping faster than I thought that it would. So median price in Orange County is 920,000 now,
Mm-mm.
and we peaked in April at 1,059,000. So we're 13% off the peak.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, we would see a peak to bottom fall of about 10% seasonally because it goes up and down. And I think that I don't know. I think that we really did have so much inflation, artificial inflation in values in 2021 that we're going to see a little bit of erosion this year.
You mean the house I paid $250,000 is only worth $900,000? Oh my God, the market's falling. I better get out.
See, yeah, there you go. Yeah, housing really should be a long-term play. So people that were speculating on housing are all just kind of desperately looking for something else to do now because housing is housing. It's a long-term play. But something I thought was really interesting that has come to the fore in the last 2 to 3 weeks in Orange County, and I suspect all throughout the state, is that with all of the massive fires that we had in the last year, all of the historic fires that we had in the last year, insurance companies are now rescinding or declining to renew master insurance policies for condominium associations.
Yeah, we were talking about that offline. You know,
Yeah.
some places where like deals fell through or something here
Yeah.
because all of a sudden this condo association had lost their
Yeah.
insurance.
So we're seeing things like condominium communities that have 200 and 300 housing units in them that require a $50 million insurance policy should the whole thing burn to the ground so that it could rebuild them.
Right.
And now they're not able at any price to secure insurance more than 10 million on average. So they're grotesquely underinsured. So now when an individual home buyer comes in to buy one of those condos, their lender won't finance it because of course the collateral is not insured from the master perspective.
So does that just freeze sales in that community till they figure it out?
Something awful. So I called, my buddy Otto, the president of CAR, and said, "Tell me you're talking to Sacramento." He's like, yeah. Call me next week. We're working on this. Because if something isn't done to compel the insurance companies to step up, or the state or someone to step up, it's going to blight all of the condos in high fire threat areas. And in California, that's a lot.
That's a lot of them. So
It's a
all of a
lot
sudden
of
these condos can't be sold because they
Yeah.
can't be insured.
Yeah, so
Wow.
all I can say is that if you are a condo owner and you're debating selling, this might be a good time to call me
Yeah.
because things are going to get worse really
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's 1-800 call me right now.
yeah, right. So regrettably, that's this week in Orange County.
Wow. Okay. Well, on that note, all right. I'm still waiting to hear what Homesy, how they're going to get my homes on social media here.
Well, Craig is going to dial into this with us, but before we get into Homesy itself and his reason for founding it, and Craig, I can't thank you enough for being here for one, and I'm fascinated by your background.
Well, it's not a background that I would easily share with anybody. I don't want my kids to follow in my footsteps.
But
Uh,
you kind of have to explain how you came to real estate because you didn't start anywhere near there.
no, in fact, I grew up in a rental household.
Hmm.
My parents didn't actually buy a home until I was in college.
Hmm.
And so all I really knew actually was rentals. And what's weird about that is that, you live your whole life in rentals wanting to be a homeowner. And it never happened for me until finally I lived in a house, an apartment on the Upper West Side, and it was a lovely little jewel box overlooking West End Avenue, and had a view of the river, and was able to buy it FISBO and then flip it about 2 years later after my kids were born.
Hmm.
For a beautiful three-bedroom apartment overlooking Prospect Park West in Park Slope in Brooklyn.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't picked up, Craig's in New York.
I love the
Yes,
way he's just casually throwing these things out like we all know what the Upper West Side is and all
Yeah.
these things.
Every once in a while, I have to remind people who are listening, he is not in Orange County.
That's right. I just learned what Oceanside was last week. So all through that period, I had nothing to do with real estate. I had actually started out as an artist and writing a lot about music and writing, and my journalism side of me got picked up, and I ended up writing for all the big magazines, for Vanity Fair and the New York Times and New York Magazine and all that business, and ended up writing a book which Wendy's been bugging me about,
Yes.
called The Wicked Ways of Malcolm McLaren. It was published in 1989, and I'm dating myself, by Harper and Row. And that was a biography of the man who was the manager of the Sex Pistols Adam Ant, Boy George. He had his own solo career and tried to make it in Hollywood while he was dating Lauren Hutton. And the book is really a retrospective look at British political and cultural life from 45 to 85.
Wow.
And McLaren died a few years back, probably think about 6 years ago now, 5 or 6 years of melasthelioma. But he was a truly provocative figure inside the British music culture. In fact, I mean, the Sex Pistols, which was the most famous band he managed, they managed to be on the front page of every newspaper and magazine in the UK for a long time between 1976 and 1978. They were constantly doing provocative and insulting and difficult things. Um,
Well, one would never expect that given their name.
yeah, exactly. Um,
Kelsa
and
Freeze.
so, and so there I was, I felt like, I'd made the cross from being a writer, even a pretty good one, to, being an editor in chief.
Hmm.
And I was doing that for, I don't know, couple of years. And then finally, sitting in this beautiful co-op and working for citymortgage.com. And as the editorial director of this company that they had decided they'd actually gotten $7 billion of mortgage assets from ABN AMRO,
Mm.
and as a result of that, they got for as I always like to joke, for an extra lousy $1 million, they got the URL mortgage.com.
Well, that is
So
a pretty
there I
good
was.
URL to have.
Yeah, exactly. And so for $1 million, what the heck?
Yeah.
Um, and um, and so they invited me to be the editorial director, and so I spent a lot of time in Stamford, Connecticut, where their headquarters were.
And give me some perspective about when was this?
2007, 2008,
Okay.
um, and so somewhere in there. And my kids
An
were about
auspicious time for real estate, wasn't it?
well, when I found out that in fact those were subprime assets,
Uh-huh.
that's when I lost my job. And for 16 months, I was out of work. And
Wow.
there I was in the beautiful apartment that I'd made, I'd been able to buy and sell and, or, sell and
Hmm.
buy. And the buy was actually in an auctioned, it was a hot market.
Hmm.
And we had to buy, kept going from, I think, just under a million. It sold for, we bought it for just under 1.2.
Hmm.
And, suddenly then, of course, as the gods would have it, I was out of work for 16 months.
The
And it
universe
was,
has a horrible sense of humor.
yeah, exactly. And it was a horrible time.
Mm.
And it was bad for me. It was bad for my ex. And, we had to finally, we were on the verge of foreclosure because we couldn't figure out who even owned our loan.
Wow.
We had no idea who was owned because all the loans were packaged. And so
Right.
we were writing to everybody. I wrote to Obama. I wrote to you
Wow.
name it. And we could not figure out who the heck owned our loan. And we were
Mm.
really considering, foreclosing
Hmm.
when finally I got a nibble from AOL. They needed an editor in chief for AOL real estate. And I said, well, you know what? Having been through this process, I know something about this now.
Right.
And I think I'm going
Intimately.
to volunteer for this job. And lo and behold, I got it. And, what was the very first thing that happened was my boss said to me, hey, we've got, I don't know, a listing for every single house in America through move.com. Move.com was then owned by the National Association of Realtors.
Hmm.
So, it was this a great opportunity to kind of like, um, uh, you know, um, do something unique, to innovate on that opportunity. And so I said to him, hey, listen, there's, all these listings and you want to use journalism to connect people, but there's Facebook out there and people are connecting directly to one another.
Hmm.
Why can't they connect directly to one another through the vertical of their homes? And it was like, well, what are the pain points? And there were so many pain points.
And you were more
And there
than
were so
10
many.
years ahead of the wave on this.
Uh, I always am, sadly.
All right.
um, I'm swimming out there in the ocean, dog paddling, waiting for that wave. And so, he- because it was the Move.com's listings, Move was three-quarters owned at that point by the National Association of Realtors.
Hmm.
So because of that, we were terribly afraid of losing that business.
Oh, no
Um,
doubt.
and so, and the NAR is the second largest, most, lobby in the United States. So, we were really concerned about it. And so it was, hey, you know what? Don't do any of that stuff. Just make some blogs up. And so we created a blog called Housing Watch and another one called Rented Spaces. And they performed spectacularly well. Readership increased dramatically. There had really never been a journalistic approach to real estate at that point.
Right.
And
I
so
read Housing Watch.
yeah, so that was my baby,
Huh.
and AOL real estate flourished, and for 2 years I did that. But I never stopped thinking about this idea of people connecting to one another about and through their homes, validated relationship to their home, and validated relationship to talking to one another. And listen, for me, it was personal. What I found in that situation where I couldn't figure out who owned my loan,
Mm-hmm.
where I finally had to kind of, you know, pack up my marbles and move to a rental,
Mm-hmm.
was that it was a really lonely process.
Yeah.
I think people all over in real estate feel that real estate, even with chatty real estate agents,
Mm-hmm. I think
even with friends,
in spite of us.
it's in spite of us. It's a lonely process. And I think because there's a lot of shame about money,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of shame and a fear that we're making a mistake and leaving money on the table
Yeah.
and not really talking about kind of where we are in our journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we understand that for most of us, buying a home is the biggest financial asset we're ever going to own. And so screwing that up is tantamount to saying, you know what, you failed at life. You
It is,
failed.
and I'd like to comment on something you just said because that's something that we've touched on my show, and that is in Orange County. And you've seen the reality TV shows; they are, for the most part, sadly true. There has always been this social construct of you have to go out and fake it till you make it. You act as though you have everything and not a care in the world. And when we had the recession hit and everyone was underwater in their mortgage and everybody was losing their house, suddenly the shame of not being a homeowner was a great deal diminished. So you really touched on something that was super relevant in our market. There was a great deal of pride in home ownership, but the recession changed that, and people started talking a little bit more honestly about their situation and their condition for the first time possibly ever. So it's interesting that you touched on that because it's something we've seen here. So please go
Well,
on.
and I think fundamentally, what we've learned, especially in the past couple of years, is that the inequalities in American life, you
Mm-hmm.
know, between who has and who doesn't have,
Mm-hmm.
between different groups of people, between white people and black people, between all different kinds of people, those inequalities are glaring and they have so many effects on how we think about real estate. And yet we can't talk about them because they're embedded historically in our entire perspective about housing and about who we are
Mm-hmm.
and how we mix and bring people together to create the best communities, the best neighborhoods. Because it's not that way for many people in this country.
It's not, and you touched on another thing that's really important that I think you and I have discussed off mic, and that is that there are things that that you and the community can say and opine and lament about not having a cultural mix and all of that. And as a licensed broker, I can't talk about any of that, which is
Right.
I'm really hamstrung, and it's frustrating because someone needs to have that conversation.
And more importantly, people need to have that conversation with many people
Yeah.
because they need the data and information. I love the fact that you started the show with so much data about the housing market locally. I think people lack this kind of in really over holistic view of
Mhm.
the data that surrounds them.
That's why we
And
started the
and
show. Yeah.
right, and usually what happens is the locus of the data for most people today is the agent, is the broker.
Hmm.
That's how we find stuff out. Now you can go to Zillow, you can go to Realtor.com, you can go to HomeSnap. There are all these places to go online aggregating tremendous numbers of listings.
Yes.
Getting the data even there and getting a really solid grasp on it is really tough.
Well, if
And
you lack
yet,
context, I mean, like you, it's
correct.
impressive you've gotten where you are because you're not a real estate agent or broker. So if you lack the context, the data can be somewhat daunting.
It is daunting. It's tough to do. It's tough to figure out how to actually understand. Some of the statistics that you said, for example, just down 40% off of normal, right? In terms of like how many homes have sold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those are important statistics, but understanding what they mean to you
Mm-hmm.
is a real issue. It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
So now, to answer Paul's big question, is it the houses talking to one another? No, it's not the houses talking to one another. It's people talking to one another. It's buyers and sellers speaking to one another. It's
Mm-hmm.
buyers and sellers recognizing and saying, hey, you know what? How is it that I can actually, afford this place? Or what's it like on that block? Or why is that building valued differently than this one, even though they're identical?
Mm-hmm.
And those kinds of questions, I think, are the ones that plague nearly everyone as they come into the market.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's the other piece of it, which is, hey, I love looking at houses. I love, being able to see. The more I can see of somebody's home, the better.
Right.
And so the idea is social real estate is actually this thing that suddenly, instead of having one point of contact, a single point of failure, when it comes
Oh,
to data, sorry about that, but
wow.
that's what we call it, single point of failure. Now we have, well, you could say we have many points of failure, but we have a community of people who can talk to us.
Right.
We have a lot of people who can actually say, you know what, let me give you a better idea of what houses are like on that block. Or let me tell you about this building that's going up. Or, ask questions and all this kind of stuff. People can constantly get, and it's not necessarily tied to them buying or selling on the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not episodic. We
Mm-hmm.
say it's non-episodic because just like on Facebook, you come on all for all different kinds of reasons, to meet your friends, to talk about things that you care about because you have an urgent need as well. So social real estate is really bringing buyers and sellers together directly
Mm-hmm.
and helping them to make better decisions through the network effects that happen as they join together and create data. And that's what Homesy is really all about.
I love that. I do. I love that because people, I think, do not take enough time incubating, for lack of a better word. If you're going to make that massive investment, you really should be incubating and doing your social research. What is it like to live there? And why is this tower more expensive than that tower? Like, well, one has, different sunlight and it's dark all day, and the other one doesn't. All this nuance that's so incredibly relevant that they need to get before they pull the trigger on something so momentous.
And think of how tough it is when you're actually been given the opportunity by your boss to
Mm-hmm.
go live remotely, to say, you know what, you don't have to live in downtown Miami or downtown New York, or you can go 50 miles or 100 miles or even anywhere as long as you can get back to the office once a week.
Yeah.
That's
So
all I
now they're
care about.
moving to an area they potentially know little about.
Correct. And so, it's very difficult to know who are the brokers I can rely upon in that area. How do
Mm.
I find the right block? It's fine to say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna move from New York to from Brooklyn even to Hudson, New York. But how do I know that's the right town? And what if that town right now is already getting filled with, investors coming in and snapping up homes because that's been the latest trend.
Right.
What do I do? How do I know which towns specifically are going to give me the best opportunity? How do I know which towns are going to give me the greatest bang for my buck? How do I know where the best stock is?
So these people get on the Homesy app and they just start chatting with each other. Is that how this works?
Well, like every social app, there's a feed,
Mm-hmm.
and that feed helps you just see at a glance in reverse chronology what the heck is going on that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But there are two other critical pieces of the app today, and it's growing. We're at an MVP stage, just putting the app into beta.
Mm-hmm.
But the first of them is creating a profile for your home. And what's really interesting about the way we think about the profile is it's not just little piece of your home here and a little piece of your home there. We've structured it through your rooms.
Okay.
And there are two really important reasons why we structured it for your rooms. The first of those reasons is simply that there are a lot of rooms in this country. There are 7 median rooms for every occupied unit.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's about 132 million occupied units. And if you multiply it by 7, you're going to get something like a billion rooms, which is kind of amazing, an amazing number. And
It
when you think
is.
about the amenities in those rooms, your refrigerator, the technology,
Mm.
the windows, the flooring, all the stuff that we don't have a way to actually think about today because the MLS doesn't incorporate those amenities
And not in great
in the
detail.
room.
Yeah. You're
They're
appealing to
not
the
there.
voyeur in me now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's right, exactly. We can start to say, hey, what about your kitchen with its amazing island?
Mm-hmm.
What about your bathroom with its amazing giant walk-in shower? What about your bedroom with the lights streaming in? And what are those rooms really like in the daytime and the nighttime? Are
Mm-hmm.
they quiet? Are they are they sunny?
Mm-hmm.
All those questions that you were just saying, you know, how am I going to do that if I have to visit remote locations, four or
Right.
five of them? How am
Right.
I going to do that in this environment where people don't even like people traipsing through their house anymore? And so,
It's true.
and I think there's a tremendous opportunity to actually get a great deal more in-depth data about what a home is like, and understanding that you know what, a home is a canvas for our creative capabilities as human beings.
Oh,
When I
absolutely.
step into your home, I see, oh my God, all those fabrics and all those lights and all those, how you've designed it essentially. And even if you're not a design person, you're still creating a design. And so that's part of what the magic of going through rooms is. They're numerous and they create data. They create a way to simply talk about what a home consists of.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we can say, you know what? Here are the 10 rooms in my house. This is a person who's got more rooms than the median. And you can actually just create stories about each and every room. And it's as easy as we stole this idea from Tinder. You're literally swiping left or right from room to room. It's almost like you're walking through the home.
Okay, you're cracking
Room
me
by
up
room.
because during COVID they said that real estate sites got more hits than porn did. So I'm cracking up that you followed the Tinder model because it's kind of perfect.
Well, the truth is that we deliberately did that. And the reason is because, you know, Facebook has 200 billion views a month.
Mm,
But when it comes to, and Zillow only has 20 million views a month.
that's
But
incredible.
Zillow has 18 pages or something like that every time someone comes and visit. But Facebook only 5. So
Mm,
we wanted to combine those two models. The model where people are looking at many different places,
mm.
many different rooms, with the model where they're coming back quickly and frequently to see their friends and to exchange information. And if you think about the cross between that model, well, it makes you very happy if you're somebody who's an advertiser
Mm,
or you're somebody who really wants to get massive exposure for their home.
mhm,
And so that's part of another part of what we're able to offer is the more you engage on Homesy,
mhm.
the more your home is going to rise to the surface of all the other homes on the platform. And so it creates a kind of opportunity to advertise, if you want to say,
Mm.
but it's not an advertisement. It's doing it through your social engagement. And your social engagement creates data, and eventually we want you to own that data. We're probably not going to be able to do that right at the start,
Mhm.
but you will be able eventually to have some kind of digital asset that you're creating out of the data of your home.
So let me
And that
understand this.
asset, yep.
So if I want to sell my home, then I go on Homesy and I take pictures of it all and I show the world all the rooms of my home. Or when when does anyone choose to go on Homesy? What is the trigger that brings them there?
Well, that depends upon what your need is, right?
Okay.
So, if you have a really important need to find a home,
Mm-hmm.
you're an urgent home buyer, and obviously, and you're a digital first person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Meaning that you're somebody who really cares about doing everything digitally because you are there's a word, a fancy word, that was originally used to describe digital natives, but they have self-efficacy, right? They like doing things themselves. They don't want somebody to intervene in the process of doing whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
they want a community.
that's most of the millennials, isn't it?
That's millennials and Gen Zs, exactly.
Okay.
So for those millennial and Gen Z, they're the power buyers today. They're the largest cohort of home buyers in the United States today.
Indeed. Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, de-accessioning folks who are, Gen X and trailing boomers, those folks are the sellers. And so they're getting rid of property as they become empty nesters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so our objective is actually to bring these people together and have conversations. Well, when do they do that? Well, first of all, they do it if they're really in market, if they have an urgent need. The boss said, hey, you can work from wherever you want. They're going through a marriage. They're having a baby. They came into some money because a parent passed away. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. All of that is the critical component of what makes for a kind of urgent buyer.
Okay.
Um, but then, of course, on the other hand, for sellers, there's all kinds of reasons to de-accession stuff. They also want to move. They also want to move maybe someplace smaller or to the country, or, somebody passed away. And so there's all kinds of reasons why people shed properties.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first reason why people come to a site like this is they want to actually engage in understanding what the market really looks like as opposed to what the market for a specific home looks like.
Right.
Within that, they can then get greater information, more detailed information than they would get from a listing. From a Homesy point
Yeah.
of view, a listing is just a sales brochure. It's made by somebody whose job it is to buy and sell homes. But
Absolutely.
homes are not only their transactional value. The data that we use to sell and buy homes, the data that we create even when we're not selling and buying homes is valuable. It's valuable to us and it's valuable to the next person who buys, and it may even have value in the marketplace. And so part of what we're really building is a way to generate data through the network effects of all the users. And that is really the amazing thing that Homesy builds. It's an entirely different way of thinking about, hey, what's the value of your home data today? Well, I'll tell you what the value of your home data today is. And this is, maybe not fair to our friends who are agents and brokers, but it's essentially a tax that they have to pay in order to sell your home. Every piece of marketing they do costs them something.
Mm-hmm.
Lead gen costs them, advertising costs them, printing those postcards and those yard sale signs. It's all a tax on selling,
Yes.
right? And it also comes out of the buyers as well.
Absolutely. I mean, to say that the buyer's not paying would not be factual.
Right. So, but to the consumer, there is no agency, no control of their own data. The broker owns it 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So the consumer is watching as, hey, the agent is making money using my data, and yeah,
Right.
they're paying for it through their advertising or through their marketing,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a very minimal cost because frankly, agents don't have a lot of places to actually go and do marketing.
Mm-hmm.
After you've sent out the postcard, and maybe if you get, into the Sunday supplement and you have your co-brokering costs,
Right.
pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is actually open a way for people to actually say, you know what, my data actually has value.
And
So
okay, so
as
what?
I,
So their data has value. What do they do with it?
well, there are a bunch of things you can
You
do.
gonna
Just
tokenize
like,
it or?
well, that's one opportunity that we think is out there. And so we are actually actively looking to create an opportunity where you would get an NFT just for corroborating your address on Homesy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd be able to mint additional NFTs that would actually for every room that you've created. Now, that's kind of just to give users the opportunity to actually benefit in a financial way
Mm-hmm.
directly from their data.
And so
But
it
the more
incentivizes them to be more active on the site as well, right? Featuring more
Well,
rooms and
that's what I was just gonna say. The
okay.
real deal is the more you contribute, the more your home is gonna become popular. It's gonna be surfaced more by the algorithm. And so what's
Ah,
really fascinating is that the automated valuation method of your house, right, which is the AVM,
mm-hmm.
Zestimate, right? And there are 4 or 5 different AVM capabilities. In fact, if you go on realtor.com today, you'll see that they're now incorporating 3 or 4 different AVMs and letting you basically come up with your own perspective. But now you've actually got this other opportunity to actually contribute to the value of your home by creating data about it and helping other people understand your home and its details better.
So the more people who see it and appreciate it, the more it enhances your value.
Correct. Or at least the digital value.
Interesting.
Because there is a reality, there's a difference between the digital value, in other words, the people who see what's going on Homesy,
Hmm.
and the people who are just, they're only on Zillow.
Right.
And I feel sorry for those people who are only on Zillow because the Zestimate by Zillow's own calculations is off anywhere between 3 and 15%.
Thank you for saying that. I've been saying that for years.
Well, that Zillow says it. You don't have to take my word for it. And so and so that's why Realtor.com has gotten four Zestimates for you from different companies. And so
Right.
now there's an opportunity to create a social valuation. It's actually what your community says about that AVM, about
Hmm.
that estimate. And they probably know more than the algorithm that created the AVM itself.
And I
So
have to imagine some of those conversations about value probably get a bit contentious.
I would hope they will.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of what we want to see is people actually digging into that. And you know, we think that there's a tremendous opportunity for people to actually get involved in detailing, debating, and talking about real estate the way they do when they're passing down, walking down the street and they see a shop
Hmm.
in the town square where there's all those pretty pictures of houses that are available.
Hmm.
But it's a one-way dialogue at that point.
Right.
We think that when you open up the doors and people start talking about their homes and their data, the market is being expanded in general. It's being expanded for consumers and it's being expanded for brokers and agents as well, and general contractors and designers and architects
Hmm.
who now all participate in this conversation. And it's interesting when you were talking about, there were 3,600, active listings. I was paying attention, you know, and 1,700 homes in escrow and 60 days to sell inventory. Um, and I was thinking to myself, gee, if more people knew how beautiful the homes were, and even though they're obviously a bit more expensive than the median
Hmm.
across the country, twice as much, right?
Hmm.
Um, you know, but maybe there's great buys. What would happen to the market in San Diego, for example, when people were exposed to the greater knowledge base of what that market really looks like? Maybe there would be a hell of a lot more competition in San Diego, or maybe actually it would be in a community that's not as popular as San Diego, where people could get good value.
Yeah, it's interesting because the stranglehold on our sales here in Orange County is not about that, but I would love to see how Homesy influenced sellers here because sellers here are absolutely adamant they're just not leaving. They're just not leaving, and that's what's stifling our supply, which is what's stifling our sales. It would be I can't wait for you to get here. I mean, honestly, I just can't wait because there are so many things I can't say. And there are so many things that I would want to say to buyers and sellers alike, but because of, regulatory guidelines, there are many, many things I cannot talk about. And socioeconomic is most of them. And cultural is certainly among them. But if we could let sellers here know you could have the same lifestyle elsewhere, um, through this social app, it might, loosen things up. Because if it doesn't, Orange County is going to be a very, very, very boring place for the next 10, 15 years. Anyway,
Don't people move every 7 to 11 years anyway, even when they have a 30-year mortgage?
not anymore. Here we're pushing 12 years. Yeah.
Pushing 12.
And we have so
Right.
much affluence here that sellers are saying, I've got a 2.5% mortgage. I'm not going to sell this at all, but I will buy another one. So they continue to consume, but they don't give to the supply. And we're hosed because we have, to your prior point, a wealth gap here that is just growing and it's frightening. And the wealthier are getting wealthier and making more real estate investments, especially as Wall Street gets a little sketchy and scary. And the people who really want to buy and enter this market can't. So,
And that's why I think there's so much opportunity to help people discover, new markets that are
mhm.
near those hot and frothy markets. So one of the things I found really fascinating is a recent poll that said, you know what, Nashville, which was frothiest market last year
Mhm.
or 2 years ago with millennials,
Yeah.
is now being replaced by Knoxville or Oklahoma City,
Yeah.
right? These other places that other people we might not think about if we were a little bit older. But suddenly there are all these pocket communities that have great homes.
I love it. And when the people
Hundreds,
speak, then you know it's not just a sales pitch because it's the true population speaking.
right?
All right. And I want to go on and on for hours, but I have to take a quick break so Paul can thank our sponsor.
Let's do that. Let's give everybody a chance to digest some of this too. You're talking pretty high level stuff here, and that fits with our sponsor because they're a high level boutique litigation firm, legal team that was put together from the big law firms. The partners who founded our sponsor, Ford and DiIulio, did so on the concept of aligned interest, where their success is tied to your success, not just trying to drag it out and run up all the bills and see how much they can milk out of every single lawsuit that they get involved in or legal case. They're there to engage in the relentless pursuit of their clients' goals, whether in litigation, mediation, or at trial. And that means they get rewarded for being both efficient and effective. If that's what you're looking for, once you find out there is a different way, try Googling FordDiulio.com, FordDiulio, FordDiulio.com. Do I get to ask my one question here today?
Yes, Paul.
I got about 100 of them to ask here. First of all, is this app up right now or is this coming?
We are just finishing all the last final bits and pieces, and it is going to be public beta in about a week and a half, I would say, 10 days.
That's exciting.
Okay, well, you'll have to give our audience a chance to be a beta testers for this thing here. And to
Absolutely.
Try
Anybody who's interested should write me. I'm Craig, Craig, at Homesy, HOMESY.us. And we'd love people to come and beta test all over the country, especially out in Orange County, where it's, it is such a frothy and smart market. Absolutely.
And the topic, that's what my real question is. I suspect that there is a large community of people who wants to talk about their homes in an intelligent, in-depth way. They do it with their neighbors. I do it with my neighbors because it is for most of us, particularly in places like Orange County, our wealth, our retirement, our savings, our everything. So the value of our house isn't just sort of like, yeah, okay, it went up a little bit or it went down a little bit. Some markets, I know, I grew up in the Midwest, things didn't move that radically or that fast or that much. And you're in it for 30, 40 years. And so you took this. It wasn't a weekly topic, what's going on with my house. Whereas it has been. That's why we're thrilled to get Wendy to come in and do this show. Because in Orange County, it's how we've all made our money. It's how we've all held on to our equity. And it's where we have so much of our life, because Orange County, Southern California in general, has just been all built on massive growth, continual growth, forever growth. I don't know if that goes on forever. I suspect not. But for the moment, it's still topic number one on everybody's mind. And I suspect in a lot of major markets it is. So
yeah, Paul, I love that. I love that way of thinking also, because I think the truth is that whether you're well-to-do or not, whether you're staying in your home for 12 years or for 4 years or 2, the reality is that we think about what we're doing with our homes differently. We understand that remodeling and changing our homes and growing our equity through the changes we bring to our homes is core to how we grow our equity.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
Over time. And so one of the things that really makes Homesy different from most real estate sites is we think that the process of thinking, hey, here's a buy build decision. Is that, should I be thinking about remodeling my garage and turning it into a home theater or home office or my basement? Or should I put that pool in that I've always been dreaming about? Or is it going to pay? Is it going to make sense? What's the cost? Is it going to be? And how to do this when I'm actually in the process of buying itself is really difficult.
we've got other choices here. The auxiliary, what do they call it? Auxiliary
accessory dwelling units.
accessory
ADUs.
dwelling
right.
units, where
That's
suddenly it's starting to percolate. But we got the law there, and most people don't know where I could turn my garage into a rental. I could turn my garage into my granny flat or something here.
So there's all kinds of investment into real estate. And it's not just about buying and selling. It's also about remodeling. It's also about recognizing the opportunities that are in part represented by my ownership. And so what we really are doing is giving you ownership of the data, understanding what are the capabilities of the home, the physical home, and then how you actually organize and get clarity so that you can make better decisions about it. And I love, both your commercial before and Wendy, when she was opening up, talked about alignment. And I think brokers are actually really critical to this process. We don't want to get rid of brokers or agents. We want them to be involved in the process because they have so much knowledge themselves. And so part of what we're also trying to do is create an opportunity for really a professional class of real estate creators who might actually be part of the sales opportunity, but have so much more value in terms of helping us either understand what our home's value consists in, or really, how we could grow that value by selling in a frothy market, or maybe by staying in it and remodeling. And I think that's a big change in the way we think about what the role of the agent or the broker is.
Absolutely. Wendy's going to jump in because she has to, but this is what she built her whole career off of. Not
Right.
just how many transactions can we crank out this week and how quickly can we do them, but can we serve as a consultant? And maybe you'll even come back and do it again someday.
Oh, he has no choice. I'm going to drag him back.
But this notion that you're there as not just somebody to process the transaction, but you're there to give them some guidance and some advice.
And real life information,
Yeah.
not manufactured, packaged for sales purposes.
Right. It's all fine. Sell your house. It's always a good time. What can I do for you right now? Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's an efficient markets thesis that has underlied real estate for as long as it has existed. And the truth is that we have inefficient and irrational markets, not rational and efficient markets.
Very much so.
Yes.
So, we have to try to help people in those crazy times when it doesn't really make sense and they're afraid to make big jumps, moving their house, selling their house, moving somewhere they don't know. And where should that help come from today? Again, it's only from one person who you can reach out to and maybe some close friends.
Yeah.
But when you can have a community, it takes a village.
Exactly.
And I think when you have a lot of voices, it can be super helpful. It can also drive you crazy. And so we also think that a large part of what Homesy has to do is protect users from all kinds of bad conduct online, but also protect users from people who are in those debates and who may disagree very strongly with them.
You mean my cousin's friend who just got a real estate license 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to entrust her the biggest decision of my life here because she's my cousin's
He
friend.
just says that to make my head hurt. So.
And she'll only charge half of what a regular realtor. So why? Yeah.
Well,
Right.
there's so much we have to talk about. I mean, we have to have Craig back, but the bottom line, Paul, I wish you had been there, because when he sat down in the lobby bar and told me what he did, he seemed a little reluctant to tell me what he was doing. And I was like, oh my God, there is such a massive gap in the market that you're going to fill. There's so much space for this. And I think he was.
Can I
looked
give
a
you
little
one other
surprised.
bigger perspective here too? I've talked about this a lot. Nobody listens to me. I'm an older guy here, right? So I remember when a house was not a piggy bank, when a house was something you were going to live in and make a home out of it for the rest of your life. And maybe you pay it off someday in your retirement, and that would be about as much you do. You didn't think about whether it was going to go up in value. In fact, you were probably going to leave it to your kids, and they might live in it for the rest of their lives. It was not an investment. I mean, it was, but I didn't think of it as my primary investment. I thought of it as a house, and I didn't think about ever moving or making money on it. I never remodeled anything. My parents lived in their house in suburbia 50 years, 40 years. They never upgraded one thing. They bought it and they liked it, and the kitchen and the bathrooms and the bedrooms stayed the same until they died and somebody else took it over and remodeled it. This notion of upgrading and changing and flipping and moving, that's a rather modern concept.
That's absolutely true. And the whole notion of creating a new asset class, which is what we've done with housing, has actually been a transition that's been taking place over a number of years. And I think when we do these kinds of things, we need broad numbers of people to help us understand what the values that are changing really are. because it's not simple to sell and buy homes. It's
Mm-mm.
not easy.
No,
It's not.
And
not anymore.
you know,
If it ever was, right? It's not a two-page contract. Well, I think there's so much to be had with this. I think you're really hitting the same topic that we're trying to hit on this community radio station, this live podcasting or whatever this is, which is to foment, to get data and to foment conversations because people need the data. They want it anyway, and they're just asking their neighbors, "What do you think? What did you hear? What's happening? What did they do down the corner?" And we have no real community to have that conversation except through these new mediums.
Yeah, I'm
and guess
super
what?
excited.
We do it everywhere else. When we want a job, we put our
Yes.
data on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn,
When
right?
when we want to know good investments, we go to public.com or Robinhood. When we want to find somebody to
A restaurant
shack
to
up
eat.
with,
Yeah.
we go to
Yeah, a
and
restaurant to eat. We have all
right,
these
we go to-
places. Yeah, right.
Well,
Right. And so you're spreading your data everywhere. And the truth is, when it comes to real estate, for some reason there's all this emotion around it. And we don't need, if we're putting our job searches, if we're putting our love
Life
lives,
choices,
if we're
yeah.
putting our life choice, our investments, why aren't we talking about our homes? It's time to start talking about our homes, and it's time for consumers to own their own data and to be able to actually say, you know what, this is important to me, and I think other people are going to find it important as well, and we should talk about it. Not just leave the data to some listing, which is basically just a list.
yeah. And it's, yeah, it's heavily edited. I mean, for example, if I'm selling a house and it's next to a dump, I'm not going to put the picture of the dump in it. I'm not,
No,
you
you're
know,
not.
but it's relevant,
Probably not going to do that on Homesy either. But
but the
you
neighbors
know,
will be talking about it. It's like, yeah, okay, you get a little bit better.
But I don't
grass than
get
a
the
dump.
story of the house when I look at it on listings. We all can watch listings now, and I get the parameters. It's this size. It has this many bedrooms. It was this and this and this. But I don't know any of the feeling of that neighborhood or the story of that house or the improvements they put into it. Why is that kitchen any better than any other kitchen? Why is that view? Oh, that's the one.
Yeah, and
that's exactly
this
right. And
nuance.
storytelling is the bomb. That's how we sell
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
We don't buy a car based on the fact that it has four wheels and windshield wipers
No.
and a fast engine. We buy a car because it plays into the story of our romance with the road
Yeah.
and where we're going.
Amen.
And when we buy a house, we're doing the same thing. We're telling you about the romance of the mama and the papa and the family that grew up there and where they are. And that's when we see a happy house, it sells.
Oh,
When we see
totally.
a sad house, it doesn't sell.
Right.
There's a lot there, believe me, just in terms of the sunlight we bring to these things.
Yeah. And, a little bit off topic, but not really. Craig and I were having a phone conversation last week, about this and getting ready for the show and all of that. And the flock of wild parrots came into my yard, and he was telling me how there's
Yeah.
those wild birds in his neighborhood. And so
Yeah.
we had this instant bond and this commonality that I would have never known about.
And there's a ton of them in Santa Ana for some reason.
Yeah.
I think I'm told it's that they released some pet parrots and they started breeding, and that there's a flock of them now. There's a whole colony of them in Santa
That's
Ana.
fodder for another show. But
Yeah,
anyway, we have to put a pin in this because we're running out of time. But Craig, I hope that you were adequately warned that I was going to ask you a few personal questions. So,
Oh yeah, I'm all for it. Go
okay.
right ahead.
So this is my version of the Vanity Fair Proust questionnaire.
I love it.
Okay, and because this is a show about real estate, tell us about where you live and what you love about it.
So I live in a place called Windsor Terrace, which is right outside of Park Slope. First of all, we have Prospect Park, which was Andrew Olmsted's favorite park, even more than Central Park. And it's also right next to the cemetery, which is where all the parrots are right here.
I love that.
And so the cemetery was also designed by Olmsted, and it's an amazing place, Greenwood Cemetery. Basquiat is buried there. Leonard Bernstein is buried there. There's so many things.
Wow.
They do concerts there, and it's just a tremendous and gorgeous place with sepulchres and gargoyles, and just it's terrifying and it's beautiful, and it just creates a sense of quiet.
I
So
really
Windsor
want to come
Terrace
visit
is
now.
wonderful. Well, you're welcome to come and visit. So that's where I live, and I'm lucky enough right now to live in this lovely, small. These are attached homes. They're kind of not quite townhouses, but they're attached homes basically, and each one is different. And the street here that I live on is has white picket fences and big arbors and trees that cover the road, and you'd think you were in the country.
I love that. It's very romantic. You do know how to
Tell
I
the
think
story. Tell
you
the
tell
story.
the story. All right. So if you have one, what is your most treasured possession?
You know, I think it's my 0028 Martin guitar.
All right.
It's not actually one of the old, real vintage ones. It was bought in like 1975, and I think that that time Martins were not being made with the best timber. But
Mm.
it has great tone, and I love to play it. And I think it probably rescued that before I'd rescue anything else in the
Oh my
house.
word, that's awesome. I love it. All right. So, and given good grief, your pedigree is vast. But given all that you have done and all you have yet to do, what would you say is your greatest achievement so far?
Professionally, this is the thing that has been this has the opportunity to help more people than I've ever been able to help before. When I would write articles for big magazines or when I would write for newspapers, even the New York Times, the ability to help people is actually kind of increasingly limited by media
It is.
for a variety of reasons. But you know, creating this product and being able to put it in the world, it actually can do things to help people with the most important investments in their life. And it's more than just investments. It's actually a way to corral their creativity and make it valuable for themselves. And I think everybody loves their home. Most people.
Hopefully.
We decorate our homes and we do all kinds of great stuff with them. And you know, that stuff becomes private. It's behind locked doors. But think about the joy that we have when we come home and, you know, unlocking that joy and spreading it and showing other people. We
Right?
see magazines, but it's not very real.
No.
So now there's a way to make it real and share the joy and the creativity that we have about our homes, and to do that in a way that really, you know, works in so many ways and for so many different reasons, but is controlled. It's not for sale by, it's not the Wild West of FISBO. It's not Craigslist. It's a
Hmm.
way to actually say, you know what, look at the great opportunity that my home has brought me. And who knows, if I sell it, maybe it'll bring you too.
You know, and I have to say, on top of all of that functionality of it, I really, really love that it is another way to create community because I think that that's something that we are missing culturally. And you are creating a way for us to connect, and that's so vital right now. So I applaud you for that. That's massive. And I know you already said it once, but just restate for us, please. How can our listeners get a hold of you if they have questions?
Absolutely. So I'm Craig, Craig, at homesy.us, and feel free to drop me a line. We are, as I said, about 10 days away from putting the app out in public, and we'll be releasing it slowly to beta testers because there's a lot more we want to grow, and we are trying to bring this out to as many people as possible. So if you can help, we love your help.
That's awesome. I'm super excited. All right. Well, until next time, we're going to have you back and talk about how the beta has been going. But for now, I just want to thank you, Craig, and of course, Paul. It was a great conversation. And please tune in and listen to This Week with Wendy wherever you most like to listen to your podcasts, or just follow me, The Real Wendy Ross, on Instagram.
Thank you, Gwen. Yeah, thank you.